I was like, no, I just want to do this. I'm going to make this happen. We're going to go. And we just went for it.
Shot of you at the Powerhouse Classic, right? What class were you in again? You're figure, right?
Figure. Yeah.
But 90 pounds, like, that's incredible.
Good, very good structure, good shape, good structure. Yeah.
And I had
hit a pretty big PR too, tearing it up there, right?
I did it.
This episode is brought to you by First Detachment. First Detachment is an expert formulated supplement company founded by renowned coach Justin Harris. We've combined science with real-world experience in each product. We are battle-tested. Are you? Find your battle today at firstdetachment.com. All right, we're live. We're recording. YouTube, thanks so much for tuning in today. We have Jessica Raymond, nurse practitioner, health enthusiast, powerlifter, recent competitor on the stage, just killing it out there. Thanks for joining us so much. And as always, my co-host Justin Harris. For all the audience out there, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment and turn on notifications. As always, if you have questions, put them in the comment sections. Our guests are very gracious. We'll gladly get back to you and answer your questions, or we will reach out on your behalf and answer those questions. So welcome to the show. Happy to have you on.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we were chatting a little bit before we started recording here, and I thought it was just, really interesting because obviously your whole life is revolved around, optimal health between weight training, competing, practicing medicine, obviously put a lot of time in the gym, a lot of time in the kitchen, a lot of time in school and training and things like that. So be curious just to see, or hear a little bit about me for our listeners. When did some of this start for you? Like, when did you get, clearly you're passionate about it. It's reflected in everything online and just, your life. Like, when did you really start kind of getting passionate about all these things?
Right. So a lot of time growing up, I didn't have a lot of family that was really into health and wellness. So I really wasn't kind of like interested in it. I ended up going to nursing school, and that's where I kind of started the whole process, and then went through that. Didn't really work out very much through then, hardly at all. Didn't really focus on diet or anything. And then of course, what happens with that, coupled with birth control and everything else, you end up overweight and just kind of stressed out. And I had worked in the ER for about 5 years at that time. And I'm like, I need to go back to school for nurse practitioner. So then I add, nurse practitioner on top of that. And then I had a baby, and I was 28 when I had my son. And then you wake up at 30 years old after everything. You're like, oh, geez, what happened to my 20s? And here I'm at 30. Overweight, unhappy. And I just was working at the hospital in acute care. I'm a nurse practitioner in family medicine. I have my postgraduate certificate as acute care adult Gero NP from Wayne State. And you work in the hospital setting, and you're looking at the patients, and you're looking at the end stage of these disease processes. And you see these patients with dementia in the hallway, like yelling out, not knowing their family. And you're like, okay, how do I not make that happen? How do I not end up like that? And you just I just started in the gym. I needed it a lot for mental health. And I had talked to somebody, and they said, do you want to do powerlifting or bodybuilding? And I was like, I want to be strong. So then I went to powerlifting. Yeah. And started with that. And then did some meets, did well. I mean, of course, I got all the 9 white lights, on my second meet. So that's all I can do. But, and then kind of transitioned over to bodybuilding after that. But really the driver of being into more so the preventative medicine was really, and health and wellness is seeing the end stage of so many people's lives in the hospital. And really, they were only 60 years old, and I'm 30. I'm like, 30 more years. I have 30 more years to turn this around. And I'm like, okay, turn this on the highest notch possible, eat healthy, get in the gym. Changed my surroundings, got a lot of new friends, new family, and just grew from there. And it's just been a great journey since.
You said ER nurse for 5 years. That's stressful, huh? I worked in a hospital setting for probably about the same amount of time. I did exercise physiology and then echocardiography. So my only experience in the ER would be, come in and do an echo real quick on someone. And even that was more than enough for me.
Yeah, I was in a level 2 trauma center in Saginaw. So Saginaw and St. Mary's.
Wow.
And so level 2 traumas, you have somebody coming in having a baby and you have someone with a gunshot coming in. You're cracking their chest open.
Yeah.
You're doing internal paddles. Like, it's just amazing. And then someone like comes in whining that their toe hurts. I'm like, dude, just like go home, you know, like you don't need to be here, honey. You know, so
Sure.
you got to, I love the ER because you got to see so much disease process, so much education, people from all different walks of life. And it's very stressful. It's overwhelming. You are flying from the moment you get to you clock in to you clock out. But it's such a passionate like group of people there. And so it was always a lot of fun, but switched over to do more like hospitalist work after that. So then have been doing that since I've been in Nurse Practitioner for about 7 years now. So
okay, well, I think it's really interesting for our audience out there, because some of our guests, you know, they were in like junior high school athlete, you know, collegiate athlete, then they went on and competed or whatever the case is, or you know. So I just think it's really, you know, it's cool for me as I interviewed, you know, different people over time, and I look forward to many more. Is you were 28, you said. Yep. Right? And you had your son at 28. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
28. Yeah.
And you went back to school when you're 30.
What's that?
You went back to school when you were 30.
I had my son was 28, so I went back a little bit before that for my NP school.
That's what, 2 years, right?
It's 2 or 3 years. I feel like I spent like 7 or 8 years in college altogether. So I was like, I just like was a whole whirlwind. So I think it's about, I think it's 2 or 3 years to be an NP. After you have to get your bachelor's, and then you have to go for your master's. So then you have 4 years bachelor's, and then you do like 2 to 3 years for your master's, and then my postgraduate.
Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. It was 2 years of graduate. Yeah.
No,
I just think that's really, you know, I think it's important for like listeners out there to realize you were, if I heard you correctly, you were around 30, saying like, I'm out of shape, like this isn't what I want, like, and you know, so if I'm doing the math right, you have a 2-year-old son, like, and just, you know, made this change, and we'll pull up some of your Instagram, just kind of show some of that. But I just think it's really cool. And you know, you train at Coop's gym, right?
I train at Coop's. Love Coop's. Have been there. I have 3 different gyms that I work out, mainly First Fitness in West Branch, Coop's in Saginaw. But I love working out there. It's such a good environment because there's so many people that have the same like mindset. And so it's fun to work out with them, but it's fun to like branch out and go to all the bigger gyms too. But love that we have Coops available. Exactly.
Yeah, they were actually the first gym to carry First Detachment products. So
I remember when you
Coops
guys
been
were
a friend
there
of Justin's.
April.
That was like we had just launched. They're the OG wholesalers.
Yep.
Yeah, I played football with Rob in college. So
yeah, they were the ones that told me to reach out to you, Sandra and Rob and Michelle. They said, no, go with Justin. You're going to be fine. I was like, I don't know who to go with. I need a good trainer. I have everything around me. I need to do this. Tell me where I need to go. And he's like, Justin Harris. I was like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, for the audience out there too. So Jessica, you mentioned you did a couple, you know, some powerlifting meets and wanted to get into competing, and worked with Justin. How long did you guys work together for?
I believe it was like the competition was on October 1st. And then I think we started in like May or June. I think it was May or June. So
I don't remember the exact.
Had a good prep. Had a good long prep. It felt like forever, but
yeah. I mean, it was hard. I mean, it wasn't a first prep. You know, a lot of people do a first prep where they kind of want to like to put their toe in the water at a novice, you know, event or something. Where it wasn't. We got her in real contest shape, and she suffered. I mean, she worked for sure.
Yeah, it was. And it was crazy just to think, I was like, no, I just want to do this. I'm going to make this happen. We're going to go. And we just went for it. And we did all the cardio. There was so much cardio, but it was kind of fun in the summertime. Like you'd go out and run outside. So that was kind of good. And then everyone at the Coops is so supportive, and I have a supportive boyfriend, and he lives the same lifestyle. So really the diet was completely what we normally eat, like chicken, rice. That's all we still eat that way. It's chicken, rice, beef, and whatever else, you know, comes into play. I love the flank steak at the end, but
everyone loves that, right?
I was like, give me more. But we basically all have the same like diet, even we eat now. And then I don't know, it was great. I really felt like when I got to stage, I was like, I I actually belong here. Like I felt like very confident. And, I feel like a lot of imposter syndrome sometimes. And we just kept losing weight and got thinner. My face got so thin. I never thought my face would be so thin. My mom's like, what are you doing? I was like, it's okay. It's all right.
Yeah, you were definitely team lean face by the end.
Yeah.
God,
what and how much total was it that you lost from like that moment when you were talking about like, I need to lose some weight or whatever to the stage? I'm just curious what that range was.
Yeah. So when I was pregnant with my son, I weighed 225 pounds. So 225.
Okay.
And from on stage, I was 135 or less, like sub 10% body fat at least. Like it was a huge, almost 100-pound difference.
Yeah, so there's a shot of you at the Powerhouse Classic, right? What class were you in again? Your figure, right?
Figure. Yeah, I love the figure. I just love that X frame. And whenever I see this picture, I'm like, oh, my lat should be more flared out there a little bit more.
It's so hard to look at pictures of yourself, right? It's like, but 90 pounds, like that's incredible.
Yeah, and it was really cool, like kind of see all the other girls there, and I was like, okay, no, I belong. Like I did really well.
You have very good structure, good shape, good structure. Yeah.
And I had fun with I have to critique my posing anymore, but Drea Shaw, she just won the 3rd Miss Olympia for bodybuilding. She was my posing coach too, and worked with her consistently, and she was amazing. And I know I could have done better at posing, but that was my first time I'm posing. I think I did okay. But
well, that's hard for the females. It's brutal. It really matters a lot more. It's almost unfair because there's like the stage presence. The guys don't really have to worry about that. They have to pose and everything, but there's a lot more involved with the female posing because it's with the guys. It's front relax, side relax, and you can't fall apart in between poses. But they don't really. There's no, like, the term stage presence doesn't really exist, but for the females, it really does. And you have to, from the minute you walk on stage to the minute you're off stage, you're being judged, and a lot of times, especially when it's close, the deciding factor is the judge is watching you when you're not hitting a pose.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I remember when Shannon Seeley was on the show, right? Like she was telling me about, she got marked down one year because like her suit wasn't, as flashy or whatever as they thought. So it's like, we can play on like plain black trunks, slap them on, just get sprayed down, or just go out there, do our thing, where it's like, women have the spray tan, but then you have the shoes, the suit, right? Like the hair, jewelry. Yeah. It's like, and then you have to pose like, and there's, so much more movement. I feel like we're like, we kind of get away because we're guys with like being robotic in between our poses. Like it's more accepted for men, I think.
Right. But it was fun though, because like you're like very, you can be considered like masculine because you have all these muscles, right? But you have to still be like feminine. So it's like really, I love having like the best of both worlds. So you're like, you had to be very feminine with it too, but like you're very like masculine. So it was like really, it was really cool. Like I felt like it was, I don't know, it was a really great experience. I can't wait to do it again. Eventually. Yeah. You get that time. It's been long enough where I'm like, I think I want to do this again,
It's been long enough when you forget the pain. It's like probably
exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was going to be my next question. Any other shows you have in mind or time frames or?
Yeah, I was like, I want to do this the John Simmons one in May, and I was like, I have more time. I have to grow. I don't want to just like come back where I'm at now. I need to continue to grow and maybe like take this time to like grow. I'm doing a lot of other personal things, like growing in my career. And so doing that, and then I don't want to add more stress on, which I wouldn't present as well on stage, because I want my next presentation on stage to be like, just to knock that first one out of the water. So I know that takes time, energy, effort, stress mitigation. And so I think for me, I think that maybe later this year, but probably more so like 2024, I'm thinking.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, I know you were before we started recording, so we'll give you your shout out here. So you just hit a pretty big PR too, right? So
I did.
We'll show everybody out there. You tearing it up there, right?
I did it.
So you're 315. Yeah, congrats. I like the Michigan banner in the background, so I call it out.
There you go.
We were recently in Ohio, the team down south territory, when we were on Table Talks recently. So it's nice to see the Michigan banner in the background.
That went up smooth too.
Yeah, I was like that. And my third attempt at my meet. When did I compete? I was several years ago now. Well, my son was there, so maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was like 270. And really, I hadn't deadlifted for a while, for like during like prep and everything. And I just kind of like got back on it, and I lifted 295, I think 2 weeks before. And I was like, I got 315 and I couldn't get it. And then I was like, I have to get this. And it just was like that perfect, perfect combination. The carbs were right. The day was right. The environment, the right song, just all that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then, was able to pull 315. Now I got to do a 315 back squat. So that's my next.
There you go. Got to have those goals.
Yeah.
And was it like someone you knew kind of started getting you into powerlifting, or was it the gym you're at? Like what attracted you
Just
to that?
The gym. Nobody in my family really worked out. Like nobody. It was like by myself. I just kind of like, I need to go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I was going through a divorce at the time, and everything wasn't happy, and my mental health wasn't there. And I just was one of the girls, like it was a New Year's resolution. That's why I don't give crap to any of the New Year's resolutioners that come in the gym, because I was a New Year's resolutioner.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, here we go. Let's go to the gym. I'm going to start here. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm on the gym. And really a lot of the times I was listening to a lot of I'd go on YouTube and I type in motivational speeches. And I was like, I don't know. This is just my like mental health time. And then I was like, okay, this treadmill thing, I'm not really into this. Let's try to do the weights. And so started lifting the weights and just talking to people like at my gym at First Fitness in West Branch. And they, were very helpful, kind of like helped me through and were very supportive. And if you're really interested, you just have to be able to dive deep into it yourself and like go on Instagram or YouTube and just try to find things that you like doing and try it out. And finally just ended up with powerlifting first. But
yeah, awesome. And is there any aspirations there to do another meet in the future? Not
I can't say no, but maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I like the powerlifting or the bodybuilding side of it, because I liked how I felt when I was so like, not like energy wise, but I liked how I looked like when I was so lean. But I know to get there, I need to do like powerlifting or that power building side of things. So I don't know if I'll do a powerlifting meet again, but maybe. I can never say no.
Yeah, it was always one of those things I struggled with, because I leaned more towards bodybuilding, but I remember like my dad was one of the reasons why I wanted to do more powerlifting, and I didn't end up doing it, but because I did compete a little bit in my early 20s, but he was just like, I don't understand this like posing crap, but that thing where you pick up the heavy stuff, that's pretty cool. Like that's how basic he was. He's like a car guy. He had no clue about exercise or anything. He's like, that I think I could watch. That was pretty cool. So he used to always say that. I'm like, all right, well, if my dad likes it, maybe I can give it another run. But so that was fun. And then I ended up in my early 30s doing a short stint of strongman, but similar to like when I used to train with Justin, training with world-class lifters, I had the same group of friends in strongman that were all like world-class guys. And so of course I injured myself a couple times, and then, so I did one meet and then that was it. But, I tried to hang, but I did for a little while. I hung in there for a little while. Then my wife's like, coming home smelling like tacky. You can't stand up straight. You had to go to the ER a couple times. Like, listen, we got pictures of you lifting stones in a car and stuff. Like, that's cool. Like, now let's cut it.
Yeah. After a while, it's like, let's move to like the longevity side of things. Make sure that I can like lift for a long time instead of just lift heavy, Yeah.
Well, and actually it's kind of a, interesting transition too, because you service a lot of different patients between, ER and then some more proactive healthcare too, just, as an overview. I mean, we were talking a little bit before, you see a lot of men and women. I mean, generally, what are a lot of things you're seeing out there maybe that are causing patients to be in front of you that are having some, illnesses or deficiencies and things? Are there any commonalities you kind of see in like the male population of things that are kind of, eye-opening to you, that why when you're seeing a lot of patients out there would have it be with energy or hormonal or, any other elements that are coming across your practice?
Yeah, sure. So from looking at from both aspects here, because I really feel like I have a unique kind of role with the acute care, where I see like the end stage and also like the preventative side where they come to me too. So from the acute care side, seeing, of course, people in their 50s and above, the number one risk of death, or the number one killer in America and the world, is ASCVD. Cardiovascular disease, so strokes, heart attacks. And 90% of the factors that could prevent cardiovascular disease are preventative processes, you know, or preventative things like not smoking, doing your workouts, like not eating like crap, like things like that. So seeing that a lot of time in the hospital. And then when I see my like more so health and wellness or preventative practice type patients, they're more sort of like, I just don't feel like I used to feel, you know, I don't know. Some things just isn't right. I don't have enough energy. I don't have enough drive. I'm just moody, low sex drive. And it's really kind of those blanket type symptoms. And there's a good handful that do say, hey, I just want to like check my labs and see what's going on, which I really love that too, because the key to longevity, I really feel, is lower insulin markers and lower cholesterol markers, specifically apoprotein B. So if we can identify things like that early in their lives, like their 20s, 30s, and 40s, they're going to be great when they're in 60s, they're in their 60s and 70s. They're not going to have a med list that's like 20 items long that I have to input on the computer when they come to the hospital. So I really think if you do not live a optimal life in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you are definitely not going to live optimally when you're 60s. You're not going to be able to run with your grandkids. You're not going to be able to walk. You're not going to be able to sit on the toilet. So like it is so good to see in the 20s, 30s, 40s where they're like, I just don't feel right. Something's up. My family doctor, they're not really interested. They just telling me like, take this SSRI or do whatever, or just general blanket statements to do, you know, like just go eat right or something like that. So it's not giving them specific information. So when they come to me, we really listen and take that subjective information coupled with the objective information that we can get from lab work and really come up with a good game plan for them. And at the end of the day, a lot of times it's going to be, you know, the non-sexy items, which sexy items are going to be the hormones. They're going to be like the peptides and the fun stuff like that. But the non-sexy items that they need to do are the basics, the foundation of like sleep, diet, getting your protein in, exercise, sunlight, stress plays a huge role. So it's really talking to them about that and trying to help them dial that in. And then looking at their labs, see where we can like unhinge items that they could propel themselves even further to help them live this like most optimal life possible. So I really think that's such a good role between the health and wellness field, like the health and wellness where you can kind of get some quackery, they call it, you know, it's like, I'll just do these medicines, like have this colon cleanse. And I'm like, I don't know if we need to do a colon cleanse because I just took care of the person in the hospital that had dehydration and all this other stuff. So it's like, it's this really great area that's bridging kind of health and wellness and medicine that kind of looks at both sides and helps them out. But I probably went on a tangent there like I normally do.
No, it's perfect.
So yeah, but it's really, you know, something's just not right. I don't feel right.
Yeah.
And no one's really listening to me. So
I think what's really interesting too, though, is like we were actually just recently talking with some other people in the industry, and they were saying how they remember in like the 90s, early 2000s, you know, maybe even like 2010 to 15, whatever, like there wasn't really a lot of places, you know, there wasn't a lot of options to, if you were feeling off, where people would listen, you know, like me, my general practitioner, I'm very fortunate. He's younger, meaning, you know, I think age doesn't necessarily matter, but I just think he came up around a medical community that was just more open to, you know, not just painting with such a broad brush, I guess. And so, but even in that case, like, I think it's important that people understand the importance of having baselines earlier in life so that they can measure that, because it's such a wide range. Like if you talk, you know, testosterone is such a wide range. Different female hormones are such wide ranges. And then thyroid processes are such wide ranges. That's like, well, you're normal. And it's like, well, says who? Like, you know, like I don't feel like myself. And a lot of those, you know, as I'm sure you're seeing out there, can come through in someone's personality traits, right? So they really aren't themselves. Like I you know, I know of several people, you know, me included, that I went through like a 5-year phase where things that really mattered to me, like I was on a podcast once talking about this, and I said, you know, if you for men, right? I can speak for men. So, on this topic, you know, something that used to get you fired up, right? Like something like if a child was being mistreated or whatever, like, I mean, those are more obvious things, but like something you're passionate about, to take action and do something, and you don't have that same thrust, like that same feel, you might want to check on that. You know, I'm saying like over several months, whatever. And that was something like I found out was, myself was a huge difference in like my positive aggressiveness, like male, I don't know what to call it, so it's like male assertiveness, or like, no, I'm not going to stand for this. Like, this is my integrity and who I am. I'm going to speak up on it and try to actually do something positive. But I didn't have that fight in me, I didn't have it, and so that was something I had to kind of do, is from both a holistic, supplementation and pharmacology standpoint, to take a look at the full picture and address those things. And it was made a big impact, I guess. So.
Right. And I think too, when you have a partner that is going through that, like, so looking from like a female standpoint, looking at like their husband or their significant other that's been for a long time, and they are developing that, they don't have that interest. They're like, is something wrong with me? Like, female is always like, what's wrong with me? Like, it's always that. And really, it can really cause a lot of trouble with like marriages and just relationship issues. And they're like, are they cheating on me? What's going on? And it's really, and sometimes they are, but sometimes it's like, let's look deeper into this. What's going on? You're not yourself. Let's look at your lab work, and really like diving in and leaning into the issue versus like kind of the accusatory thing. So it really, I think a stat that I see, like, how like 50% of the marriages end in divorce, and like 70% of those, the people that initiate is the female. So is there something going on with like the male population? And I see that a lot with their testosterone levels, that they just kind of lose that masculine drive. They don't, they used to, and it just can destroy a lot of things. So I feel to like kind of help, kind of like the women also, like working with their hormones and everything. I feel like if I help the men a lot of times too, I feel very empowered that I'm helping women, honestly, because I'm helping men be more masculine, and not just say I'm doing like giving them testosterone, because I feel sometimes it is, but also really like, okay, here's your testosterone levels. Here's your first level. Say it's, even if it's like 300 or something like low, and we're like, oh, it's low. Like, you don't just give them testosterone right at that time, because there's a lot of things through their lab panels or their lifestyle that you can dial in and unintentionally give. Is it their thyroid? Is there something going on with the thyroid? Is there something with like DHEA? Or they, is something wrong with the liver? And you optimize those things first, and then see how the testosterone is at a later date. And if it's still low, still having symptoms, everything's dialed in, then it gives you a little more fuel to say, okay, let's do this testosterone. And testosterone is something that you don't just try. You don't just try testosterone.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong medication that you start and you continue on, you dial it in. And it's just to strengthen your foundation, your masculine foundation. And you still have to go to the gym. You still have to have the right diet. It's not going to fix all those things.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, it's going to cause the negative side effects. So I really, these getting your labs done, dialing, putting in the effort and the time and continuously doing that will be an improvement for yourself, but also for your family. So, so I really like that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, because there was an article out, and it's called, it was a Forbes article, and it said, you're half the man your father was. And it showed, almost half the testosterone levels in like a, same population, different people, but in different time periods in the general area they tested. And it was just dramatic difference over one generation. And then another one that was like a 25, I want to say it was like a 25%. So it wasn't quite half drop. But then they, two different groups, it was in Danish, they called it a Danish study, I guess a bit named after what it was, but in the early 1900s, where they did a similar thing where it was like a grandpa and two generations, and each one had double-digit percentage drops, which I just found just mind-blowing when I saw that.
Well, I remember 25 years ago in undergrad, I can't remember if it was 1,050 or 1,150 nanograms per deciliter. That was the upper limit of norm. That I don't know what they consider anymore, but it's definitely not 1,100
now.
Usually 900, but if you're talking to a medical provider, like if you went to your medical doctor and your number is not less than 300, then you're not going to get testosterone.
Right.
Yeah, but so I remember in like a textbook seeing 1150, and it was like it was 450 to 1150 or something. Where now, like, I don't think it's anywhere
3 to 900. 3 to 900.
Yeah.
Well, and kind of transitioning over to a little bit with women's health. I'm probably going to bounce back and forth, actually, and I had another thought on men's health. But with women's health, just a little interesting side story, and then I'd like to get some of your feedback on it.
Can women be healthy?
Well, I hope so. It's they are more complicated. I would say they're more complicated to be healthy.
Yeah.
Trying to interject some humor.
There you go. There you go. Well, we'll unpack that and see if we can't find out if women can be healthy. No, one of the things was interesting, like was, you know, a family member was like literally had to sleep in the middle of the day. And again, those personality traits, like mood was different and just wasn't themselves. Like it was clear. And so went and got TSH levels pulled. That was it. The doctor just pulled that. And I want to say maybe T4, maybe, but it's like, again, it was a 5-minute consult. Like, you're normal. Great. Like, no, like, you know, I just happen to know more about the markers at the time. I'm like, this isn't, you know, I'm not a endocrinologist, but like, I know these markers exist. Let's pull all these. And I ended up going through the whole panel, finding some things. And there was actually 2 things that were really interesting. Was reverse T3 was higher, and then like T3 uptake was low. So it was like, okay, so even if we would have stopped at T4 and T3, like it would have looked like, oh yeah, you're still, again, quote unquote normal, but just the actual active parts of the thyroid, like, and then the tissue's ability to utilize it was lower. So it's just really fascinating to see. Literally, like 2 cups of coffee went away like that with a very, very low dosage of that, and then, you know, combination with some lifestyle changes over time, things started to transition as well. But I'm just curious, like, what are some of this? So I know there's a little side run there on the story, but what were some common symptoms you see or obstacles you see in women's health just in general that you know, that they report, and kind of how to unpack that?
So kind of similar, and then maybe we can talk about thyroid too, is even for myself, before I had my son, I had like 3 early miscarriages. And they were really early, like less than 6 weeks or so, and 6 or 8 weeks. And it was really like going, and I had been on birth control for a long time at that time, maybe 10 years or a little bit less than 10 years at that time. And it really never was questioned about the birth control. We never really looked deeper into anything else. It just was, well, I guess we keep trying. We throw the whole kitchen sink at you, and we do like the Lovenox, we do aspirin, we do heparin, we do everything possible. And then the progesterone and everything, and we finally had him. But it was really kind of disheartening not to hear, like, okay, it was really probably the birth control that messed me up the whole time and increased my SHBG, and my testosterone was low. And then there goes your estrogens, and then because there's progestin in the birth control pills and not progesterone, and that was kind of disheartening there too. And then I remember just a couple years ago, I went to the OBGYN, you know, for your normal checkup, and I was like, okay, so I'm in my 30s. Like, I feel a little bit off. I don't know. Like, should we maybe check my labs just to see? And she goes, no, you're only 33 or something.
Yeah.
So it was really like, it was not even like it wasn't even like what symptoms are you having? It was like, no, it was, you're
right.
Like, you're healthy. Your blood pressure's fine. Like, maybe lose a little bit of weight. Like, that's it. And it goes beyond that. So it's just, and the problem though, is I can't say it's all like the medical provider's fault, because I work with a lot of medical providers, and we don't go into medicine. Like, the first thing you would say you want medicine is, I want to help people. Sure. But then the constraints of the time, the number of people that you have to see, what the insurance does, it really limits you. And the average number of time that you can spend with a client is 7 minutes. Like the average, not that you can spend, but like in the average amount of time that someone spends with their provider is 7 minutes on average. And so what can you do in 7 minutes? Like, basically it's log into your computer if the computer's working, and then like see what they're on, and then talk with them for a few minutes. But so it's really constrained in the medical field, but it still isn't, you know, fair for the client. And they really need to try to find on their own journey, like through online, which is just a terrible thing to kind of just maneuver anyways if you really don't know what you're looking for. So it's really good to have more of a health and wellness preventative type provider that does know the medical side of it, but also like they can dive a little bit deeper into your lab work and find out what's going on. And kind of back to that thyroid example, like, so you look at your thyroid and you maybe see like your TSH or your free T4 or free T3. And then you can look at the reverse T3 and the thyroid binding globulins, the T take, which looks at that reverse T3. But there's more so than just looking at your thyroid, because the thyroid receives a lot of signals, right? So the signals from the hypothalamus, there's a signal from the hypothalamus, the thyrotropin releasing hormone goes to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland releases the TSH. The TSH goes to the thyroid gland, releases the T4, T3. The liver has the thyroid binding globulins, and that goes and carries the vehicle of the thyroid around to the or every single site in the body. There is a thyroid receptor site in every cell of your body.
Right.
So that's why when someone has thyroid issues, it's like every symptom, every broad symptom you can think of. So like hypo is going to be like if they're going to like hot cold intolerances or metabolism, because when you think of thyroid, you think of metabolism and energy. And so if they're hyper, they're going to be going up 100 miles a minute. You know, their heart rate's up, and they're really, really thin.
Now, can I ask you a question really quick? Yeah. And again, I know this isn't a black and white answer. So, you know, I guess just appease me here, but is it possible that if they had, would it be they had lower thyroid, and I'm drawing a blank, thyroid globulin, there's another word there, right?
Thyroid binding globulin?
Binding globulin, thank you. Would that affect T3 uptake if that was like, it was a lower number because they don't have enough to transport to the tissue or? So
if they have like if they have a higher thyroid binding globulin, they're going to have more of that, the thyroid hormones, like they're bound to it. So there could be more thyroid. If there's less thyroid binding globulin, there could be more of the free T4, free T3. But then you have to look down the line too. Are they not like actually fully metabolizing or changing the T3 into its active form, like through their gut? So there's a lot of different areas through like the gut and bio that help make the T3 more active. So it's more so than just looking at the binding globulins, but that's also a point too, because if you're on an estrogen, your thyroid binding globulins are going to increase. So if you have higher estrogen, you're more estrogen dominant, your thyroid globulins can be increased. And so if it's low, you could have more T3, T4. And then if you have a lot of T4, the T4 can transition more to the reverse T3, which is that inactive form of the hormone. And some people say don't even look at the reverse T3. There's no really reason to look at it. Other people say like you really need to look at it because in more high stress or calorie issues, you can maybe transition more to the reverse T3 versus the actual active T3. And that's kind of the sense between like the medical side and the kind of the more the homeopathic side.
Yeah.
I don't like to demonize either side. And the medical side says, you know, there's no research on that. But also you look at the homeopathic side and they look at that and they fix like maybe some stress and a couple of different cofactors and it improves. So I think there's good utility on both sides of it. And then, so yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking about if that's something you find, have you seen it? Because I was theorizing on this. I didn't have enough time. And again, it wasn't like some giant study just to me, you know, poking around with labs and piquing my curiosity in the late hours of the night. But, people that are heavily caloric deficient, because you mentioned like, you know, stressors and things, has there been a correlation with generally with increase in reverse T3 when like excessive dieting maybe, or, you know, very low?
What I see, like when I talk to people, that's one of the questions I ask them. Are you like in a calorie deficit? Are you in a big calorie deficit? Are you under a lot of stress? And it like prompts me to ask them that question. And then I'll see it. They do have a higher reverse T3. I don't have like an exact study that shows that, but just from the clinical information, like if you start seeing it so much in practice, you can correlate it or kind of prompts that information. And really what's the, is it going to change the diagnosis or change like the treatment plan? If it is stress or calorie deficit, why are we in a calorie deficit? Are we prepping for something? Do we expect this? Or are we really trying to lose weight, but it's not helping? And we need to kind of manage and manipulate the idea of weight loss and look at other factors. Like, do you have a lot of inflammation going on? Do we need to help improve your inflammatory markers, like your CRP? Do we need to help decrease that CRP? Because if your inflammatory markers are elevated, it can inhibit the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus can't send that signal then to the pituitary gland. And so it can also decrease like your gonadotropins, or if your prolactin's elevated, that can decrease that hypothalamus transition to the pituitary gland as well. So it's really looking at the whole
picture. Yeah.
Oh, it's everything. And so like if you would actually just give you T4 is kind of like you're pushing that extra inactive hormone on there, but you're hoping that all these other signaling processes are working. Yeah. And so it's looking at the inflammation, looking at insulin resistance is huge, looking at like your gut health, because they all play a huge role in what are your cofactors. So to transition from the T4 to the T3, you need selenium to take one of the iodine ions off the T4 to make the active form of T3. So if you're selenium deficient, you're maybe not able to do that. That's why you're transitioning more so, or staying with the T4, not transitioning to the T3. And in 2 Brazil nuts, that's enough selenium that you can have for your diet to help that be sufficient enough anyways. But there's so much more that goes along with it, looking at the binding globulins from the liver. Is there a liver issue going on? What's your AST and ALT looking like? Are your numbers like in the 30s, where like in the hospital, if I see somebody with a liver and AST and ALT in the 30s, I'm like, okay, this looks pretty good. You're going through this acute process. But if I start seeing it like in the 30s, kind of creeping up in the 40s, maybe, do I need to add a little bit of like NAC or glutathione because they have more oxidative stress that's going on in the liver?
Or a shameless plug for our QRF product. No, I'm kidding. No, but no, I've seen that used a lot. That protocol you just mentioned, and we're really effective with that. I did have another question. Yeah, this was kind of like, again, this was totally out of the normal way I think, because I usually don't go down the bro science path here, but I'm going to for a minute just for fun, and maybe our audience will tell me I'm an idiot for saying this, but because I always theorize like why, my perception, but you're on a caloric deficit, so if reverse T3 is high, and then a lot of bodybuilders, especially in their late, through the 90s and early 2000s, I think it's not as prevalent now, but we're using, T3 in their diet, and it seemed to be the more excessive the diet, more extreme. And I know Justin has a lot he can add to this on bodybuilders and how it affects that, but it seemed to be like it worked extremely more effective in those individuals while they were dieting versus the general population. But I also wonder in that short period of time, how much really did their metabolism downregulate outside of the fact that they're just not carrying around the extra 30 pounds of weight that they had 12 weeks. Let's say they're in the last 4 weeks before a prep. You know what I mean? Does that kind of make sense? So I was just like, for a while there, I was theorizing, like, I wonder if certain athletes or competitors, that stress response is their reverse T3 is driving way up. And that's why the T3 they take is more effective. Because some guys, like, I never take it, don't want to take it. 25 micrograms, like, I shrink. And then other people are on like 100, 120, like, just to me, insane amounts. And they seem to get great results and seem to be fine. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, again, this is total speculation, bro science without much thought. I just thought I would throw it out there and to see if there's any way to unpack that either from Justin on the bodybuilding side or medically speaking. Any thoughts?
I don't, well, I don't have it. Mine would be all bro science too. I mean, clearly, like, you're in a strong calorie deficit, you're going to get, like, eventually reduced thyroid output. But then in bodybuilding, you have other hormones involved. You're going to very likely be, especially with the men, have someone taking, growth hormone and possibly large amounts of growth hormone that could be affecting the thyroid output also. And then for whatever reason, probably because, men carry much more muscle mass, men seem to be much more sensitive to elevated T3, taking T3 as a supplement compared to women, where women seem to tolerate T3 much better as far as not trying to lose muscle mass or lose strength or things like that. But that's just 100% bro science. So I hate to even, to say anything, because you're just saying, like, my small sample size of maybe, several hundred clients over 20 years, this is what I've seen. But
yeah, and with T3, it's going to increase your metabolic rate, your basal metabolic rate. So it's going to increase that, because if you're in a calorie deficit and you're stressed out with cortisol, because cortisol plays a big role too in the transition from the T4 to T3, and even just from the pituitary gland to the thyroid gland itself. So when you have all those coupled on there, you're decreasing your basal metabolic rate. So when you're adding that T3 on there, you're increasing your energy expenditure, you're increasing your temperature, and so you're increasing your muscle growth. You can even do that with your T3, so because it's anabolic, right? So, but you can go too far on that T3, which would end up being catabolic in nature. So you can push that too far, because T3 sounds great. Okay, so I'm going to be leaner, I'm going to be shredded, I'm going to increase my muscle mass size, I'm going to be able to have an increased energy expenditure. I already said that, but if you go too far, then they're going to cause a catabolic effect. So it's always kind of keeping those in line. So there is a process through that. And again, every single cell in our body has a receptor site to thyroid. So anything we do with stress, calorie deficit, is directly going to affect our thyroid. And so that's why looking at inflammation, looking at your cortisol levels, and then looking at your gut health, that's huge too. A lot with your gut health has a lot to do with your thyroid. So if you don't have enough fiber in your diet, you have inflammation, you are difficulties with gluten or anything else, you're going to have issues with inflammation that can affect your thyroid that way too.
One non-bro science-y thing that actually involves bro science, I guess. I don't have the name of it, but you can find it. There's an interesting study where they did look at bodybuilders and female bodybuilders and female competitors, and after long-term T3 use. And there were, it's a small sample size, but there were several of them using up to 100 micrograms of T3 per day for, I think, 1 or 2 of them for a decade. And it was incredible to me how quickly the natural production returned to normal after cessation. I would never have guessed that. But in all cases, even those severe cases of 100 micrograms for a decade, within 4 weeks, their production was within the normal range. It had returned to baseline, essentially. I was astounded by that, because I would have thought, something like that, you're gonna be dealing with thyroid issues for months or years, if not for life. But it was amazing to me that it was basically a month later they were within the bounds of the normal ranges. I can't remember what if there was just T3 up, T4. I can't remember what it was, but it was a very interesting article.
Right. And I wonder how they felt, if they felt the same or what they subjectively felt after coming off of that, because that kind of reminds me, like in the testosterone realm, generally you can be on testosterone, and we don't know, there's not something that's an exact time frame or anything that I know of, but if you're on testosterone for an X number of years and you come off, your levels will probably likely go back to where you were before when you started, but are you going to feel the same way that you did? And so I'm wondering, at that time, did they feel the same way too? Because I do think the thyroid does improve, unless you have like Hashimoto's and then the antibodies attack your thyroid and you don't have the cells anymore. Because you can't, it's not like the liver, it can't replenish those the cells anymore after it gets killed by the antibodies. But from like the testosterone standpoint, your levels likely would return, but you're probably not going to feel like how you did on the testosterone.
Well, yeah, everything's relative. Everything's relative, if you've spent 10 years with the metabolism of someone on 100 micrograms of T3, I can't imagine, even if you do return to normal, thyroid levels, it would have to feel like a suppressed thyroid, in comparison.
Yeah. It's definitely going back to the cortisol and stress. And then there's so much I want to talk about still. But I do find it interesting, observing on the outside, like the athletes who seem to be having fun with their prep and they're more laid back, or they have a good stress management, like I say protocol, but I think a lot of them is just naturally how they are. They tend to, I think, again, this is theorizing here, but I think they have a more success prepping because I think they keep a lot of their cortisol things in check. Like I use a lot of adaptogens and things for like sleep. Like I was addicted to Ambien on and off for 15 years. And so like theanine, magnesium, and a few other things I've used, like natural things, I've noticed it just helped like improve I did some natural stuff, like getting sunlight on my face first thing in the day, getting active, like right away to try to like fix my cortisol pattern. And then at night, and I know other clients and things that have done this as well, but then at night using a lot of the, like I said, the theanines and such. And I just noticed my body fat seemed to change more. And it could be because maybe the cortisol was in check. I wasn't overeating more. Like I wasn't craving foods that I just consciously didn't realize I was eating before. I'm usually pretty on top of that. I just found that interesting. And then in prep, I feel like Justin's talked about before, some of the top pros or top athletes, that they seem to be so chill,
Yeah. And likely at that point too, maybe your binding globulins had dropped down, so you have more free testosterone. Because if you're going to be more stressed out, if your liver is having any problems, your binding globulins can be increased. And then as you're improving everything, the binding globulins can start to come down, including that testosterone binding globulins, so you have more free testosterone. But I do think that goes to like a huge point of off season. I don't train people, and I've been through one, but just knowing from my side of things, from like the medical and health and wellness side of things, if you can optimize your stress, your adrenal function, for females, your ovulation, if you can optimize those things in the off season before you're going to put your body through what it takes to be through prep, like you are going to handle it better and you're going to end up better on stage. So if you can really focus on, of course, increasing your muscle mass size, growing between seasons, taking the time off that you need to. Again, I've never trained anybody, but it just makes sense, right? Like you're not going to put some damaged car through like the car show. Like you need to fix that up, put some new paint on it, like fix the tires, like kind of, make sure the engine's running nicely. And like for women, make sure you're ovulating and they're just trying to get to a point, because ovulation is just the marker of health for women. I think that goes back to that question. Is a woman healthy? They're healthy if they're ovulating. Yeah. And that's because if you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, what is the role? Like what is the role of ovulation? We need to have that. We need to have a good environment. We're not stressed out. We're fully fed. We're in a safe environment. Okay. We can have a baby. Like that's that's what we're supposed to do. Just have a baby. Right. And if we're fully healthy and we have ovulation, and it's not to say if you don't ovulate, you're not healthy. There's other reasons why, you may not ovulate, but they should be investigated, looked into, and the risk be mitigated from there. But if you can really amp yourself up in that off season and maybe not start prep like when you're going through a divorce, or if you have a child who's sick or something, it's just your focus isn't going to be there, and you're really kind of pushing through, and a woman can do it. I mean, a woman, and I'm sure a man can do it too, but from my standpoint, I feel like I can do everything. I feel like I can be superwoman. I mean, when I did prep, I worked a full-time job at the hospital. I worked a part-time job with another platform, and I had a son and drove all over the place and going through a divorce. So I can do it. Like, I feel I can do it. Could I have shown up better? I always think I can. I mean, I always feel like I can, but if I could have maybe a little better environment with my stress, maybe had those handled, or had been able to, I did take a lot of caffeine. I did drink a lot of caffeine. Maybe I could have done more nootropics at that time, which could help me focus more and not feel so stressed out, and making sure, just looking at our menstrual cycles and ovulation beforehand from a female standpoint, and from a man's standpoint. I guess I can't really speak to that, but also is their liver working appropriately? Because if they're taking all these androgens and my liver's not working, do I need to optimize that first? And we've seen a lot, if you get a liver ultrasound and you have fatty liver disease, which can also stimulate into insulin resistance, or vice versa. And
you'll see that in the men, especially with oral anabolic use, and late in prep, because the liver will be so damaged that it's not able to maintain stable blood sugar levels. It can't release liver glycogen like it can, and so you'll have people getting going hypoglycemic during cardio, or you have to change the way they eat around their training, and you're no longer optimizing the diet just for the fat loss. You're keeping carbohydrates in or keeping fats in when you wouldn't really necessarily want to, but because if you don't, they can't keep stable blood sugar levels anymore because their liver is damaged.
That's a great point, because I'd say many top level competitors and such that I've heard over the years say, I would go hypo, but now that you say it, it's along that time of prep. They never said it, but I would assume they were using high amounts of orals. That probably
that's why I really dislike the use of orals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, looking at the liver, like, do you have to have like good choline and inositol? Like, do you have to fix that fatty liver before you add on any androgens? And really, like, if you don't optimize yourself beforehand, how are you going to be able to optimally handle that stress that you put yourself through? And so then you're going to have to, like you said, you have to like add in those fats, like when you probably don't need to have those fats in, or you need to like decrease the cardio because your body's too stressed out. And now you have too much fluid like built up, because the cortisol can increase like your water retention. And that's not so much the estrogen, it's going to be more so the cortisol. So if you can have all that tied in, like you can have an easier prep going through. I don't know if prep can be called easy.
There's no easy. It always ends at the same point of hell, basically. But it's how it ends there. But the goal is to end there, not get there 8 weeks out, 6 weeks out. And so you can do a lot of things to make sure that no one's feeling great at the end. I mean, it's a lot of work, but if you do the things properly leading up to in the off season, you can delay each of those, you know, terrible things a little bit longer in the prep.
Absolutely. I never felt hungry during my prep with you. Like it was crazy. I never felt hungry. I just wanted to eat something. Like I just
that's crazy because I felt like I was starving you.
Like, no, I just didn't feel like hungry. I don't know. I just kind of shut that process off and was like, I just want to like eat.
Well, you know, you said like what you said with how busy you were. I mean, that, you know, honestly, that really is one of the keys to prep. If, you know, if you can keep yourself so busy, you don't have a choice to think about it. Because it's like, you know, I don't mind as a devil's whatever, but it's, you know, like as far as being idle in prep, that's like the hunger's play yard.
Yeah.
Well, no, I was thinking about something you were saying earlier too with women's health. I mean, one of the things I've heard said many times is one of the, you know, good self-regulation for women is their menstrual cycle. Like if there's any irregularity, that's usually a sign, you know, of something's off, as you mentioned. I think a lot of women that I've spoken with, and even some of their, again, it's not their area of expertise, I'm not knocking them, but some of their GPs are like, oh, that's probably just normal. That's just how your cycle is, whether it was, you know, never really ended, just kind of coming back and forth, or really long, or, you know, different durations, frequencies, etc., to where really I don't have as much experience as you have with it, but in the, you know, about 3-4 years, and then just anecdotally talking to women, every single time they've tested their hormones when they had some kind of menstrual irregularities, there was always like clearly something off. Like you could literally just see it, you know, in there, which I find it to be interesting. And I'm curious, this kind of going off of that, as women start to, you know, age, or after, you know, children starting to grow, let's say, I don't know, maybe mid-30s, early 40s, generally you have progesterone, testosterone, let's say, and estrogen. You know, what is usually the first hormone that starts to kind of go or starts to dip below? Is there any correlation there? Anything that generally pops up that you see?
I mean, it's hard to say exactly if it's going to be an estrogen or progesterone because they all work kind of synergistically together. Yeah. So you want to make sure they're all in line. The biggest thing is if they're not ovulating, they're not going to have progesterone. So when you ovulate, when the LH signals, basically the body says, okay, we have enough estrogen, so it's okay, it's time to ovulate now. So the LH signal, the luteinizing hormone from the pituitary gland. And so when that tells the follicle, here we go, here's the egg, that follicle that's left over is called the corpus luteum, and that maintains most of that progesterone. So if we're having issues where we're not ovulating, our progesterones can be lower. So we could see maybe good estrogen still, but then our progesterones are low because we're not actually ovulating. And then looking at where are we taking those labs in the cycle. Generally, you hear the 28 days, but that's like a perfect situation. You really want to average it out to be like 5 or 7 days after that ovulation, and which it correlates with about 5 to 7 days before that first day of your period, which is the first day of bleed. So I would, if I had to choose one, I'd maybe say progesterone if the ovulation is kind of getting wonky and it's not staying right. But as you're not having any more eggs, like your estrogens are going to drop down because that's where you get it from. And then once you go through menopause and you don't have any more eggs, you get your hormones mainly from the adrenal glands. So that's why it's so important to help with your stress and cortisol and everything before optimally function adrenal glands.
Now I was going to ask you, because there's two things you said there. One is, what are some symptoms that maybe, you know, women would experience at different times of their cycle if they had low progesterone? Like, what are some things that maybe they would feel or would stick out to them?
They're just not sleeping as well. So the progesterone can break down into allopregnanolone, which helps with the GABA, and GABA just gives you a good like blanket of like relief and kind of helps you sleep and kind of like a stress reduction. So more stressful, not sleeping well are kind of the main things with the lower pregnenolone.
Got it. And anything related to like anxiety or
anxiety too, because the progesterone breaks down into like the allopregnanolone and then helps with the GABA, so they can have more anxiety at that time too, more PMS type symptoms.
Yeah, and I've heard two different schools of thought. So if this is people's theory and you haven't heard this, then that's fine. I want to throw this out there because I had a naturopath physician I was talking to, and then a general, I would call it more medical, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot which one was what they said, but they were talking about how like an overactive, their adrenals being burnt out. The body it was starting to pull more. I want to say they're pulling more progesterone to help with that. Does that make sense? Which was causing them to have lower progesterone because their adrenals were fried, or maybe it was later in life and their adrenals were supposed to be providing more progesterone and it couldn't. It was one or the other, but I don't know if that rings a bell at all or any
I'd say
thoughts on that.
Maybe it's more so maybe they were referred to like maybe DHEA, because then DHEA breaks down to testosterone, estrogen, because the progesterone is going to be coming from more so that corpus luteum after they ovulate. So it could be more so maybe with the DHEA, maybe they're referring to.
Okay.
I got a quick question. The what's your I don't even know what the current like medical thought is on adrenal fatigue. You know, but for a long time you'd hear kind of people talk about adrenal fatigue, but there was no real medically defined adrenal fatigue or really adrenal anything other than like Cushing's syndrome. But you'd hear people talk about adrenal fatigue. What's the current like medical thought on that?
Yeah, I think from the adrenal fatigue standpoint, I think it's I think there's, I don't know the exact current stance from both sides, from the medical standpoint or kind of from the health and wellness side of things, but you really is looking at the cortisol levels and seeing if you keep them at high levels for a long period of time. So that could be maybe that more of the adrenal fatigue or the adrenal burnouts when you're keeping the cortisol levels high for an extended period of time. And that leads to a not effective type of adrenals and the drop in the DHEAs that the cortisol that comes from the adrenal glands too. But more so just the cortisol, having it spiked is important. I think it's good to remember, but also if it's spiked for a really long time, that's when we can get this adrenal fatigue that comes from that, where you're just not able to respond as well and just kind of your hormone functions is definitely off.
Cool.
Yeah. One more question for you. Then I know we're over on time, so we could keep you for a whole nother hour, I'm sure, with questions here. So we appreciate it. We'll get to shoot, move, and communicate. That's our rapid fire question round shortly. But before we do that, I did have a question. It's something that a lot of people have been talking about, and I think a lot of men didn't know this and surprised. I mean, coming from working in the medical industry for a little while myself, I'm a little more familiar, I think, with it. But women being prescribed like TRT, obviously, very low dose compared to men and such, relative to that protocol. I've seen a massive shift in women when they do get on testosterone, how like the positive benefits and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing with that and just why such a positive effect, such a little amount is having with women in that case?
Well, testosterone is, it's definitely, females need testosterone as well. So it's kind of always been just like testosterone is a man's hormone and like estrogen is a female's hormone, but we both have them in different ratios, right? And so giving women testosterone, if we've unhinged everything else, we've tried to improve it with DHEA. If they're on birth control pills and their SHBGs are higher, if we can transition to something different, or if we can try to decrease SHBG maybe with boron or with magnesium bisglycinate, that has a higher affinity to the SHBG than testosterone. Is there ways that we can make more free testosterone? And so if we've done all those things, just kind of like when we do men, we kind of go through the checklist, just optimize every other marker we can in their lifestyle and dial that in. Giving them testosterone also is going to kind of have the same benefits it would for a man. I mean, they're going to be able to retain muscle mass more. They're going to have better libido. They're going to feel better, feel more energy, feel more drive. And so it's not spiking it up too much. I mean, it's really maybe like 3 to 5 milligrams per week, and you're only injecting it maybe once a week because their SHBG is going to be higher than a male's SHBG. And so women have testosterone receptor sites just like men do. We just don't need as much. And you just have to be careful not to go too far because, of course, that's when you get the androgenic symptoms. Sure. And can you improve that DHA or improve the testosterone levels by maybe just giving some DHEA, starting with that, see where your symptoms are, avoiding maybe that testosterone, because with everything else, you want to have like the lowest, most effective dose possible. And sometimes that dose is just 0 anyways. And so you want to be able to look at all the other avenues and maybe add that testosterone if you need it. And it's really helped a lot of women because honestly, when I talk to a lot of women, they want to be able to keep up with their husbands. They're like, I have no sex drive. Like, I just want to like keep up with him. Like, I feel bad. I don't feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing in my relationship. And so they want that testosterone, and we can maybe do that if that's what is needed. But I don't think just to increase a woman's sex drive, they should just have testosterone. There's other things like PT141 that actually increases like the sex drive,
Right.
like things like Cialis or tadalafil. There's the vasoconstrictors in the in that sense, but it really does the same kind of thing in women, but just a different dose, and you just have to be careful not to go too high on it.
No, I appreciate that. As a follow-up to that, relative to like, have you seen both approaches or one approach over the other? If there was, say, slightly lower estrogen, I've kind of heard this different camps out there where one would use like a DHEA, and then some would use testosterone because they know some of it's going to convert to help the estrogen, and their testosterone happen to also be low. Have you seen that in women being used, either of those protocols or a combination of one or the other? I'm just curious, just overall,
I think both of them. I think both of them. And it might, some women, for one, might just not be, okay, I don't want to take testosterone, I don't want to do that. And then maybe trying the DHA first because it can break down testosterone, estrogen, maybe more so estrogen than testosterone. And testosterone has to break down to estrogen anyways, right? So doing the testosterone injections can just also, if you could do topicals, I don't really like topical in women. I feel like it just transitions to more DHT. And it's hard. It's just like for topicals in men, like you can't control for the absorption rate. And so sometimes it goes really high, sometimes it doesn't. If you have to apply it, it can have transfer. So I don't really like topicals. That's why I like the injection more. So it maybe depends on what they've used in the past.
Yeah, you're killing me right now because I want to keep you on for 20 more minutes. You just opened one other can of worms. Now I got to ask though, why do you feel? Because I've experienced this with family members. Why do you feel topicals convert more, or maybe it's not a feel, maybe like hard science, but I don't know, but topicals convert more DHT? I'm really curious about that because I've seen similar, more what's the word I'm looking for, like alpha pathway, anyways, more like androgenic as this indicator of higher DHT symptoms from women that were using topical, and then when we switched to injectable, it helped.
Right. So there's going to be more so from a absorption standpoint, there can be more of a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor at going through the skin. And so for a male, you would either put it on the scrotum or sometimes on the inner thigh or the inner arm, especially for females, either on the clitoris or on the labia, and also on the inner arm or inner thigh. And so there can be more of an enzyme that changes it over to the DHT versus when you inject it. So you're bypassing that when you're doing injection-wise, you're bypassing that enzyme.
Makes total sense. And then I got to hit you with one more. Sorry. Subcutaneous versus, muscular injection. I've heard, again, I don't know. I've seen studies, I've seen different that oppose both. Is there one or the other you like? And then I got a follow-up question on the subcutaneous for women, but I'm just curious if you have one or the other.
For men, I think the first would be just a shallow IM injection, probably about 3 times a week is when I go to, depending on, their dosing and how they're feeling, and or even twice a week. But if they're feeling like that second shot is not, they're like, I can feel my low testosterone symptoms happen right for that second shot. So maybe they need more of a third injection in there. I would go that route. Now, if say their SHBG is really low, people are in the camp that doing subcutaneous injections at that time keeps it a little bit longer because SHBG is just short. They don't have a lot of SHBG to carry it, so they have a shorter amount of time that it can stay in their system. So they keep more even keeled numbers with a lower SHBG. Other people say subcutaneous because they don't want to have the injury at the injection site, the IM injections causing injury over time because it's a lifelong medication. So subcutaneous can cause less injury. But that's why it's also just these shallow IM injections with the smallest needle possible. So you can change the needle injection, or not the needle injection, but the gauge of the needle. So you might just have to take a little bit longer to push in if it's a smaller gauge. And so that's a way to kind of mitigate the site injury. But yeah, it's a little bit of trial and error. I don't know if there's one way 100% better than the other. There can be reports of less aromatization to estrogen if you do Q versus IM. I think it really takes a little bit of trial and error, looking at your lab work, how you specifically transition, and then what works best for your lifestyle. What do you stay compliant to? Because this is something that you have to do for the rest of your life. So
it's part of the thought because there's less like blood circulation in the subcutaneous? Does that have anything to do with like the rates of aromatization or the how long it takes for the medication to be metabolized? Does that affect that at all?
Yeah, because you're gonna have a little bit different metabolism if you go sub-Q versus IM.
Got it. Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, good stuff. You've been a great sport, so thank you so much. We'll let you go through our final round of questions here. It's a rapid fire round.
Okay.
We call this round shoot, move, and communicate. Pretty easy.
Okay.
Most of them could be, many of them could be one-word answers, but feel free to elaborate if need be. So yeah, we'll guide you through these, and I might bounce around a little bit because I have a couple different questions for you because you have such a multiple different things I can tackle here. But first one, really easy. What accomplishment in competing, so between either powerlifting or on the stage, made you most proud?
I think when competing, doing bodybuilding, being backstage, I've always I've always been self-conscious of like my stretch marks from having a baby. So a lot of women have issues with that, right? So I feel like I was the only woman back there with like all these stretch marks on my belly, but I still felt like I was so lean, I still belonged here. No one else had them. And I was like, oh, I look so good even with that. So I feel like that was my highest accomplishment, feeling like even how imperfect I felt I maybe looked, I felt pretty proud of that at that time.
Yeah, good for you. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, next, what accomplishment outside of competing has made you most proud?
Outside of competing, I think growing a business. Never thought I'd be able to do that, but starting to grow a business on my own and creating hopefully a brick and mortar here in the next 6 months for health and wellness concierge type center. So that's, I didn't really come from much in my family. I was always pretty poor. And so be able to have this opportunity is just amazing to me. So that's probably my biggest accomplishment so far. Good deal.
Good deal. All right. If you had one word to describe a female competitor, what would it be?
Discipline.
Good stuff. And one word to describe a nurse practitioner, what would it be?
One word I think for them is probably compassionate.
Okay.
They have the of like looking. A nurse practitioner, I feel like, is sometimes, a lot of times they're called like a just like a mid-level provider. I don't really worry about being called mid-level provider, but you have the lens of taking care of the patients for so long as a nurse because you had to be a nurse first, and so you see the perspective from the nurse, but you also see it from kind of like the physician side. So you have a really good lens, and you kind of have a different passion, a little bit passionate for your clients you're taking care of.
Yeah, that's great. All right, I got two. This one I might split into two. I don't know. We'll see. But word of encouragement for young up and coming female competitor, have it be either figure or bodybuilding, and maybe they're going through some struggles. Like, what would be your words of encouragement for them?
Yeah, I think. Just take it one day at a time and find your dopamine response every day. So I guess I'm a nerd and I always listen to Andrew Huberman all the time. I can't wait. And before my prep last year, he had a podcast about dopamine, and he had said, don't leave all your dopamine for the final event. So for me, don't leave all my dopamine for the stage. Find that dopamine every single day. And that dopamine is that feel good hormone, that neurochemical that gives you that drive. And so for me, a lot of it was, okay, well, I ate my macros today, or, oh my gosh, I ate more carbs today. Like, so, or you finished that cardio. So like, you have to find the positive thing in every day that spikes that dopamine, so you don't develop that post-show blues, that's so common. That was one way that I helped to mitigate that. So, and post-show is definitely real. I feel like that's definitely, but one way to mitigate that is to find that dopamine every day. That's great.
That's great advice. All right, next one. If you had to miss one, what would it be? A meal, night of sleep, or a training session?
Probably definitely not sleep, because then everything else is gonna be messed up. So it can't be sleep. I could always go without a meal. The gym is just mental and physical health. So I feel like the gym is mental and physical health, and I can eat a little bit later.
All right, there you go. Skipping a meal. All right, next one. Wow, this is kind of a unique one. When we insert this from time to time. Favorite cheat meal when dieting with Justin? What was it?
My favorite cheat meal. I don't know. It wasn't like pizza. It wasn't like ice cream. I feel like I had ice cream once for a cheat meal. I think it was just like extra food.
Just having extra food in general.
Food
Pretty
or
easy.
something. It wasn't like anything crazy. It was like extra, like, oh, I would say if I could have one, okay, so it would be a like burrito from like Chipotle. You know, like that would be my cheat meal, probably a big burrito from Chipotle.
Nice.
Or Qdoba. I really don't care which one.
All right. This next one is there one word that comes to mind that's a parallel to your approach to both like business and competing? What would it be?
Mm-hmm. I think it's probably, so competing in that is, it's just one more day. Like, I feel like it's not one word, but it's like, it's the same theme. It's like, all right, one more day of grinding it out. One more day of, you know, putting time in of, it's like effort. I guess maybe it's effort would be the one word. It's just the effort that you put into it will be the final result. So depending on what you did today, did you give 100% today?
Yeah.
If you give 100% today, it will work out in the end. So that's kind of where I think that'd be the best word, 100%.
Good deal. Well, almost done. Here at First Detachment, we talk about being all in. So we're very passionate about what we do. Everything that we do, we're all in on the content we create, the products we create, the educational forums and platforms and things. And so the question is, what is something either you're currently or in the near future going to be all in on?
I think all in on just diving into more health and wellness and spreading that word to as many people as I can see possible in my health and wellness concierge practice, through my other platforms, just trying to make sure everyone who wants to listen, right, gets their labs done, looks at their cardiovascular markers, look at their insulin markers, just because I know that's going to drive them so much to have a better, longer, happier life. That I think if we can just, and that's what I really love about looking at lab work, is like these people can see the potential that they can improve upon at this point, so they can live this robust 67 years old when they end up retiring.
Sure.
And so I think leaning into more, spreading more words, spreading more information, like more education for myself, and just investing in myself and my knowledge base to be able to spread to other people. I think that's where I would like to lean into.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the last thing that we ask is as we like to say, our products are battle tested. And so you've explained many amazing battles you're able to triumph over, but just curious, if you look at life, is there one part of life that you feel really makes you battle tested? What would that be?
I think battle tested in the sense that I struggle with, or battle tested that's made me stronger?
Made you stronger. We'll go with the positive.
Made me stronger. So I think that's made me stronger was leaving my comfort zone when I left when I got divorced. Okay, all my family and friends and everybody, I lived with them for so many years. Leaving that comfort zone because I knew something wasn't right. I needed more. There's something more that I needed, and to get a divorce, I've been with him for 16 years, leaving the family that he had, leaving the town I lived in and was born in, leaving that comfort zone and going to find something that I knew I needed. That really made me feel like, okay, very empowered, and feel like if you really don't feel comfortable, if there's something not right, listen to that and move forward. And that's really made me very strong to be able to listen to myself more. And just kind of that gut feeling that they talk about, like, I feel like that's true, and not to question it, just kind of go with it. And so that's really made me like, leave your comfort zone, do things that are uncomfortable, and see where it gets you. And it's taken me places I didn't even, believe that I could even go to. So that's been battle tested.
There you go. No, I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome. I'm sure a lot of people get a lot of value out of everything you shared today. So, Mr. Harris, any closing thoughts?
I do not. No, I mean, actually,
I concur.
Well, I'm ill. I'm dealing with an illness right now. But no, that was the most I've learned from a podcast yet, I think, or several things. Yeah, it was some core memories brought back from that I hadn't heard since probably, hearing them in a class years ago. So it was very interesting. That was I don't often feel like I'm the one being educated in a podcast, but I definitely felt that this time. It was good.
Thank you so much. It was great listening to you at Swiss too. I was like, oh my gosh. So I loved listening to that. You did a great job doing that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Sitting next to Justin on several podcasts is funny because I just look up like, oh, here's going to explain field rations. This is going to be awesome, but also I'm going to daydream for a minute because I've heard it 70,000 times, but it's super, super detailed and pretty awesome. So it was pretty cool. We were on table talks and he started explaining that. That was pretty awesome. So yeah, it's always cool to hear people that are both passionate but also well versed on their topic. And so
I think you can tell when someone really understands something, right? Because they forget that other people don't. And Jessica was doing this when they like speed talk through steps because they think like, well, obviously everyone knows, and but it's interesting because I noticed that in people when someone there's a couple things. When someone really understands the topic and they've really internalized it, they're able to explain it to someone who doesn't have a background. Like it's the less educated you're able to explain a topic to someone, the better you understand it. Like there's a famous example, Richard Feynman, a Nobel Prize winning physicist for quantum electrodynamics. Caltech wanted him to present a series of lectures to freshmen on quantum electrodynamics, and he said he tried to, and then he said he couldn't. He didn't understand it well enough, and then he took another year. And from that, the Feynman lectures on physics, which are they're not even done heavily mathematically. So I recommend anyone, if you really want to understand the universe, the Feynman lectures on physics. But the Feynman diagrams came out of that because he realized he didn't understand it well enough to explain it to freshmen, and by understanding it enough himself to explain it to freshmen is what basically got him a Nobel Prize. And that, and then the speed talk thing, I just always notice it cracks me up because there'll be like a series of steps that if you're an expert in the subject, you know all these steps, and when you are the expert, you forget that everyone else doesn't know all those steps, so you talk through them really quickly. You did that several times, so I always find that interesting.
Justin does that a lot, so I know he can pick up on that because people are like, all I heard was carbs and muscle. Like there's a bunch in between there, but there's like I might have heard the word sodium, but it was carbs and muscle.
But no, I appreciate someone who's really understands their
right.
Field of study.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. Definitely gotta bring you back at some point here in the future. For all the listeners out there, again, be sure to like, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and put your questions or feedback in the comment section. I'm sure Jessica will be happy to help us out with answering some of those.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us again. We'll see you.
All right. Thank you.